All right, this is Quarantine Home Bible Study, day 5. We've made it. We're at the end of the week. And so we're continuing in Ezekiel 34. We're looking at just those last few verses that deal with God, the Good Shepherd. This is very similar language to what Jesus uses in John 10 to describe himself as the Good Shepherd. So that's one of the favorite metaphors in the Bible of God for himself, and that is as a shepherd. So let's look at that. Ezekiel 34. Turn there with me, if you will, and we're going to see what God has to say to us today on our final day of this second week of the Quarantine Home Bible Study. We're reading kind of a long section today, so we're just going to kind of highlight a few things out of it. Ezekiel chapter 34, starting in verse 17. As for you, my flock, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I will judge between one sheep and another, between rams and goats. Is it not enough for you to feed on the good pasture? Must you also trample the rest of the pasture with your feet? Is it not enough for you to drink clear water? Must you muddy the rest with your feet? Must my flock feed on what you have trampled and drink on what you have muddied with your feet? This is what the sovereign Lord says to them. See, I myself will judge between the fat sheep and the lean sheep, because you shove with flank and shoulder, butting the weak with your horns until you have driven them all away. But I will save my flock, and they will no longer be plundered. I will judge between one sheep and another. I will place over them one shepherd, my servant David, and he will tend them, and he will tend them and be their shepherd. I, the Lord, will be their God, and my servant David will be prince among them. I, the Lord, have spoken. I will make a covenant of peace with them and rid the land of the wild beasts, so that they may live in the desert and sleep in the forest in safety. I will bless them in the places surrounding my hill. I will send down showers in season, and there will be showers of blessing. The trees of the field will yield their fruit, and the ground will yield its crops, and the people will be secure in their land, and they will know that I am the Lord, when I break the bars of the yoke and rescue them from the hands of those who have enslaved them. They will no longer be plundered by the nations, nor will the wild animals devour them. They will live in safety, and no one will make them afraid. I will provide for them a land renowned for its crops, and they will no longer be victims of famine in the land or bear the scorn of the nations. Then they will know that I, the Lord, their God, am with them, and that they, the house of Israel, are my people, declares the sovereign Lord. You are my sheep, the sheep of my pasture. You are my people. I am your God, declares the sovereign Lord. So now he turns his attention from the shepherds to my flock. He says, as for you, my flock. And he says, I will judge between one sheep to another, between the rams and the goats. So he's going to, not that just the leaders will be held accountable, but the individual sheep are also going to be held accountable. So he's basically saying he's going to judge between and then he says later, between the fat and the lean sheep. Oops. They're basically butting the weak sheep, so they're taking advantage of the weak. Okay, they're pushing them away, and he says, I will save my flock. Okay, so even within the flock, within the believer community, there are some who take advantage of each other. Okay, so it's not just the leaders who will be held accountable, but it's also the individual sheep for how they did. Then he says this big messianic prophecy. He says, then David will be my shepherd. Okay, so now King David isn't going to come back from the dead to be the shepherd. He's not saying the actual David is going to come back. Okay, so what this is a messianic prophecy. Okay, that someone from the line of David. Okay, a lot of times in the Bible, when it talks about David in a prophetic sense, it's not talking about the actual person David, but somebody from the line of David who is the Messiah. Okay, so so this is a prophecy that Jesus is going to come, and he will be the prince among them, and that he will take care of his sheep, and that he will make peace with them. That he will, and look at the things that he's going to do. He's going to get rid of the wild beasts. Okay, that he's going to provide rain. Well, actually, what he says is showers of blessing. Remember that old song? So you're going to provide rain, showers of blessing, and that they'll be no longer enslaved slaves. Okay, because they're about to go into slavery in Babylon. So this is something they're going to need to remember. That their slavery was a temporary thing. Now this was partially fulfilled whenever they were released from Babylonian captivity, and it was also partially fulfilled when Israel became a nation in 1948. But there was also a future fulfillment where God will finally restore his kingdom on earth someday soon in the future, we hope. It says that they will live in safety. They have no threat from anyone, no longer victims of famine. Okay, so you're going to take care of them in all of these different ways. Okay, and he said, and then the biggest thing he says is here at the very end, the last few phrases. He says, so they are my sheep. Sheep, and I am their God. All the world will know that you are my sheep, the people of my pasture, and I am your God. So that's how God wants it to be. He wants, in the end, because of his greatness, because of all the wonderful things that he's going to do for his sheep, he wants the world to know that they are his sheep, and he is their God, without any question, without any doubt about it. All right, we'll see you Sunday. We'll talk a little bit more about this. We're going to look at John chapter 10, where Jesus is described as the Good Shepherd. We'll see you Sunday.